it's Claire Wasserman, and welcome to my podcast, a behind-the-scenes look at what it really takes to own our worth and reach our goals. I coach real women on how to get what they want at work and in life, as well as a window into my own process as I too figure this stuff out, because it's hard. And so thank you for being here. It's nice to know we're not alone. In this episode, you'll meet Jackie, who struggles to find balance and feel confident at work. Because she's been told before by important men in her life that she's, quote, too much, she frequently finds herself pretzeling so as not to take up as much space. We talk through strategies to strengthen her self-trust, and at minute 15, 45 seconds, Jackie reveals something amazing about herself that just blows me away. It turns out her confidence has been there all along. She just needs to shift her attention towards it and honestly, learn from herself. Because here's the thing, each and every one of us has innate wisdom. We just need to learn how to listen to and honor it. A note for all of you listeners, this session has been recorded with her consent and edited for clarity. If you're interested in being coached by me or simply have a question you want answered, go to clairewasserman.com. Okay, let's dive in. All right, Jackie, I am going to read aloud what you sent in, and then you're going to tell me anything else I need to know. You said, I am looking to find more balance in my life. I feel that I usually give 95% to one thing, let's say my career, and then 5% to my personal, or vice versa, and I'm looking for more balance than that. Also, I would like to get more confident within the work environment. When you hear me read back what you sent in, how does that make you feel?
It makes me question like how confident I really am, because there's times where I feel like I'm pretty confident at work, but hearing you repeat that back to me, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not as confident as I think I am in a work setting.
All right. And any additional context that you think would be helpful for me to know in order to nail this in a good session?
I think what it is that I like to minimize myself or make myself small to make other people feel better. And that goes like in professional, in personal, and everything. And I'm trying to not do that.
Would you say that's what's driving a lot of the imbalance you're feeling in life, or is that something separate?
I think that's what's driving a lot of the imbalance. That's what came up when you reread what I sent into you. So yeah, I think that's adding to it. Yeah.
Okay. Could you give me an example of when you've done this or how it typically gets expressed?
Sure. So I just started a new job on Monday, and like little things that I know, I'll just keep quiet and let the person like just walk through explaining it or just telling me about it, just because I don't want to seem like I know too much. I think it's because my last job, my manager gave me my year end and he was like, you're too aggressive, and like things that I had never heard before working in financial services. So I think I'm trying to go into this job being more safe, because the one time I did try to stand in my power, or at least stand in what I know, I was called aggressive and too much and things that brought back a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of memories.
One thing is, we oftentimes are triggered by something that taps into a belief we already have about ourselves. Not to say that you wouldn't feel hurt from receiving this kind of feedback. We're only human, but
Right.
it wouldn't have such a big impact on you if it wasn't already something going on inside. What do you think that is for you? Why that comment from him? Why was that something that really you took to heart and now are changing who you are for it?
I think it's because I've always have been told like I'm too much, whether it's like by my father or like by teachers, where they're like, you talk too much, you ask too many questions. And now I know through therapy, like those are not bad things to ask questions or to just inquire more. And I'm not too much. It's just, I think my dad just didn't know how to handle being a dad, and a dad to 4 kids. And we are all first generation. So he was like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Okay. Now, I could go down the rabbit hole with you here on minimizing yourself, but we could also focus on finding balance. We could also find,
Yes.
again, they're all connected, but I want to, knowing that you have a therapist, like I want to just focus on where you feel like you're not getting the most support. So where do you feel like if by the end of our session, we were able to accomplish this thing, what would that thing be?
Definitely be like finding balance and not minimizing myself.
Okay. All right. Cool. So let's start with the finding balance. Give me the full rundown of an imbalanced life for me.
My job is really dealing with emergencies that impact our critical functions at my company. So let's just say like an earthquake happens. There was an earthquake this morning in California, making sure that everyone is okay. So that throws me off right away because it's a dysfunction of what needs to be done, everyday things. So it's just, and then I'm like flustered. And then like, so there was an earthquake this morning. Before that, I was at the dentist getting this filling in. And then I'm like trying to catch up. And then I'm also trying to take all of these trainings. And it was just, I was like, how is it that I've only gotten through 2 trainings and it's already like 3 o'clock? And then I had this session with you and I was like, oh my God, the day just got away from me. Like I should have done more, or and then I feel guilty and I'm like, okay, I'll just work until 7 and make sure I get everything done. And it's your first week. Like people knew you were out of the office. You're not the sole person. Like it took me a while to be like, okay, like when I got the email from you confirming, I was like, let's take a breath and just really be ready for this session because you wanted to really focus on it and not reschedule or do anything like that.
Okay, so part of your job or the sole function of your job is dealing with emergencies. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that means no matter what you do, you are always going to be in a reactive mode.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So there's nothing we can change about that. I always like to just confirm like what cannot be changed versus what can be. What are the set of circumstances that are immovable, which means the only way that there can be any kind of change, it's in how we respond to it. So I'm going to throw out a couple of suggestions and you tell me which ones resonate most with you.
Okay.
Would you say that your ability to feel at least like you've accomplished what needed to get done, could that happen by getting better at identifying priorities? Or do you feel like you were
Yes.
already good at prioritization?
No,
Okay.
I don't think that I am.
Okay. So one way that I like to look at priorities is a system of filtering all of my to-dos. First of all, having them in one place, okay, so that they're not in my head, which you're just going to be spending way too much extra energy spinning them around. So having them laid out just physically, you can see them someplace. And every single morning, this is going to sound crazy at first, and you may not need to do it this much moving forward, but at least in the beginning, every morning and every evening and every week, reviewing it and going, out of these to-dos, first of all, I'm going to put them in categories. I have them on my wall right over here. I've got things that fall under, for me, there's like the pipeline, which is like the marketing pipeline. Then we got the product. So you're going to figure out whatever categories work for you. So they're not all just like in one place, just crazy. So you're going to have them in these categories. Then you're going to do a filter for yourself, which is which of these things need to be in chronological order. If I do this thing, it's going to now allow me to press go and do the next thing. Or even, hey, if I do this thing, it makes this other stuff easier to do, or maybe I can even delete it. So the first filter is chronology. And then the second filter, business bottom line. And this might be where you need to confirm with your manager or whatever. If you do this thing, what is going to be the effect on the financial ecosystem of the company? This is really helpful for you to know when it's time to position yourself for that raise and promotion, right? Or if anyone listening or watching runs your own business, how closely tied to when I do this, will this now make or save money for my company? Really important to know. That is how the CEOs, that's how they're deciding what they're prioritizing or not. Where are we investing? It's always about how does this relate to the business bottom line? Now, I want you to take a minute and think about that for yourself because it may not be obvious at first. So then we think, okay, who can we talk to? Or how can we translate that into a different definition that makes sense for your team, your function of your job? So Jackie, tell me what comes to mind when I say this.
It definitely resonates. And I think for me, relates to the business bottom line is like, can our critical business, like for the earthquake, our critical businesses in California? I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to say probably not because most of them are in Japan and some are here in New York when we have offsets. But right off the top of my head, that's what I thought of. I was like, oh yeah, we have like people in California, which we care about, but our critical processes are not there.
And so something might be urgent, or excuse me, something might be important, but not urgent. Okay. So being able to make that distinction between, yes, this should be done, but does it have to be done right now? And you're going to realize when you put everything through that filter, there's so few things that need to be done this moment.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's deciding, okay, in a given day, how good do you feel about, or not good, but like how confident are you in how you structure your time? Like when you sit down to do work, do you just try to go for as long as you can until you burn out? Or what does like a typical work cadence look like for you?
No, yeah, for me, it definitely does. I think I definitely can organize a day. So I'll be like, okay, I have to get XYZ done. And then I'll be like, okay, I need to take a break, whether it's like walking to get a cup of coffee or just something like I walk away from my desk. The other thing I also have implemented doing is not eating at my desk. So it's whether it's just meeting new people or just going outside, especially in the summer, just being outside and not just sitting at my desk. I've read and listened to podcasts that being on your phone is not an equivalent to an actual break.
Because here's the thing that I'd love to alleviate for you is that by the end of the day, when you're looking at what you did or did not get done, that you always feel proud of the decisions that you made, so
Mm-hmm.
that you never have any regret about where you focused your attention. So even if you don't accomplish everything, you can still stand by, I chose to focus on this other thing because, and here was my justification for it. Or, hey, maybe I thought it was going to take me less time to do these things, and it turns out it actually took more time. And maybe that's because you're saying you got 5 things to do, but if you really break down each of those 5 things, turns out it's more like 10, right? And then when you
Right.
break everything down into its smallest components of to-dos, you're going to get a more realistic sort of gauge on how long things actually take you. And I think when we get better at estimating how long things are going to take, we're never upset at the end of the day that we didn't accomplish stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense now that
Yeah.
you say it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I'm really saying here is it's about a process that will continually change too as you get more work and different work and emergencies come up and things are going on in your life. It's not, oh, you figure it out and now it works, but it does get better. The thing though, that when I say it getting better, again, that process of reviewing at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, and every week, how we're organizing, how we're filtering, how we're making decisions, how we're estimating our time and energy. And you're just going to get so much more in tune with yourself. So even as the chaos happens around you, the way that you plan for it, handle it in the moment, and review it will get really in sync. Like you're just going to be aligned. When you make a decision, you feel good with it. And at the end of the day, you still feel good with that decision. And you're also
Right.
looking at it a little bit holistically during the week as well. So if we're only looking at a given day, yeah, maybe, I don't know, we mismanaged some stuff. But over the course of an entire week, oh, okay, actually, yeah, that one day mismanaged some stuff, but I ended up on 2 days later recouping some of my time. I got into more flow. So that's why I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important not just to look in the morning and the evening, but also to take that week at the end of the week. Okay, what did we every single day when I look at it as a whole? Tracking your time might also be helpful. At least it was for me. I use an app called Clockify. That's how
Okay.
I started to get really good. And I don't pay for it, by the way. That's how I started to get really good at estimating how long things would take me and also where I was getting distracted, where I could become more efficient. But again, it's not about achieving some level of perfectionism or even necessarily accomplishing more things. Again, it's about feeling better about ourselves as we do it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. No, definitely. I love that.
Yeah. And that's going to beget the confidence, right? And this is something I say 1,000 times so everybody knows this, but like the Latin root of the word confidence is trust. Ooh, and the reason I always share that because I remember when I read that, it blew my mind because I always thought of confidence as some sort of outward projection. No, it's self-trust. When I realized that confidence is self-trust, I then began to define for myself what are all of the ways in which I can create trust with myself. Well, how can anyone create trust with anyone? It's a relationship you build, right? It means there's
Right.
consistency and time. And I'd love to, for you, brainstorm ways in which you can start to self trust. And I think how we began our conversation with getting really good at being in tune with our time management and decision making process. That is absolutely one building block of self trust. But for you, as you're hearing all of this, what are some other ways you can imagine building self trust with yourself? Which I realize I sound like a literal idiot. Ways in which you can build self trust with yourself. Ways in which you can build self trust.
No, I think it's so funny because I'm just looking, I'm just looking at what you're saying, and it's what you say is, it makes so much sense. And it just, I guess it takes someone else saying it, but building self-trust, I think it's just knowing that I am a subject matter expertise in my line of business and that I'm really good at my job, and believing that and not trying to make myself small for other people.
Okay, so let's talk about that because it's all
Yeah.
easier said than done, 1000%. And it's only in the doing, going to the gym, it's doing the reps that will build the muscle. Just like,
Mhm.
yes, building trust with a person, and it is building trust with yourself, you are a person, right? You need time and consistency. So let's identify some of the things that if you were to do it, and as you do it, you're witnessing yourself building that trust and the confidence will come.
Mhm.
There are ways in which you either now or in the past have felt really good about yourself. You're like, hell yeah, I got this.
When it comes to an incident, like being able to send out an alert, sending without checking with anybody, just knowing that this needs to go out, we need to make sure everybody's okay. That's one thing. Or just like with a test, making sure that we have everything that's required for it.
When are times that you have, and by the way, it doesn't have to be work related at all, times that you have felt that level of self trust?
Like specific examples or
I'll give you one right now. Like for myself, for example, like I have felt extremely, I'll use the word confident, but I think it's more than confidence. It's I feel really aligned in flow in my body, sure of myself when I'm on stage, for example, when I'm giving a talk or when I'm writing the newsletter. And so just for yourself, we'll talk about the times where you don't feel that way in a minute, but I think
yeah.
it's important to start with any time in your life. So not just at work, okay, but in your
Okay.
entire life when you have felt that, because I'm always interested to see A, what were you doing, of course, but B, like where were you? I think environment has so much to do with how we feel about ourselves. Hell, you even started today by talking about things your dad have said to you, and that's your environment growing up, right? So
Right.
recreating environments for ourselves in which we can thrive, right? So not just putting the pressure on our willpower to figure it out,
Mhm.
but instead saying, how do I put together some kind of environment in which is just easier for me to step out, to take
Okay.
up space, etc. So for you, it could be work related, doesn't have to be recent or a long time ago, times in which you were like embodying the person you want to be.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely thank you for that. I would have to say when I summited Kilimanjaro,
What the heck? Oh my God. You're like, how do I take up more space in the world? That's
yeah.
incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. I've completed 5 marathons, and every single time it's always like an amazing feat that I have. And I think, and this is work related, I was interviewing at a very prestigious firm and I still haven't heard back, but they've written me back and they're like, we should have our decision. But just being able to get to the point of interviewing, I just felt so amazing and it was just great. So I think those are 3 examples I would like to use.
I want to amend not everything I've said to you so far, but I want to say, look at the process that you have followed to achieve the marathons and the summiting. Because no doubt you broke that down for yourself. You didn't just start training by running 27 miles, right? So I think you have so many skills already within you that you have applied to personal physical feats that if you
Mm-hmm.
can translate them and transfer them into your work setting, you will realize that very quickly you can trust yourself because you've already proven it in one area of your life. It's just not, it
Right.
hasn't been translated into this other area per se. So, and I have a feeling it's probably because you've been like triggered by various people you've worked with, or again, the environment has not been conducive to you, or maybe your heart's not really in it and your intuition's telling you to follow a different path. And we don't need to open that can of worms today.
Okay.
But knowing that you have summited, you've done these marathons, that it required that kind of discipline, planning, follow through, rest, right? Everybody who does these marathons, I've read these books about people who it's the training is not just about the lifting of the weight, but it's actually about the rest from the lifting that allows you to come back stronger. It's the mental game and the physical game together. You have mastered that. So I would really encourage you out of today's call, take some time to do journaling if you haven't already about what it's taken for you to be able to accomplish those other things in your life. And
Okay.
I would even challenge you to imagine, you may have no interest in doing this, but imagine you were giving a TED or a TED talk or a speech presentation, even to the new people you work with, a lunch and learn. What I learned from summiting Mount Kilimanjaro. Okay. Do that for
Okay.
yourself first. And then I would say, go actually do that for your team. Go raise your hand and say, I'd love to give a talk if anyone's interested in the things that I learned from this experience. I think this could be a really great internal networking thing for you to do. A huge part of
Definitely.
building self-trust and just getting ahead in general at work. It's the allies. It's having the other people advocate for you. So you're not always the one who needs to speak up for yourself. That you have
Right.
earned like instant respect when you walk into the room or the Zoom, that people know you. So it's not just doing good work. It's making sure people know who you are as you do that good work. And I think this is going to do that for you. I know as a coach, I should probably never prescribe, do this and everything. It's terrible that I'm doing this, but I have a feeling now that I know this about you, to me, you have everything it takes to do the self-trust.
Okay.
Start by dissecting what it took to accomplish those things. And then you may choose, I don't want to present this to anyone else, but it was a good exercise for me and I can see some lessons. I'm going to take that with me. Or if you're feeling brave, then I do encourage you to take that next step of seeing if what's the company culture in terms of lunch and learns, or is there an employee resource group that makes sense to join and you could offer yourself as a speaker. Listen, people bring me in and they have to pay me and you're already in, so chances are they're not going to pay you to give this speech, but I think this would be a great way for you to introduce yourself to people. And that's also why this guy who had said to you, this guy, he was your manager, he was important. His feedback, maybe a bit of it was something to take with you, but sounds like it was pretty sexist also. I would love it in that there are multiple allies you've developed at this company so that it's not only your manager who is dictating how you feel about yourself or how well you do, that your manager's manager knows you, that you've got colleagues that back you up if you need to get some support or whatever it is, that you truly don't feel like you're an island. Self-trust, I know it's using the word self, but so much of it does come from the support that we're able to really rally from the people around us. So everything I've shared so far, tell me what you're thinking, feeling, and most importantly, what is the resistance, if any, to it? Because that's oftentimes, again, like I said earlier, we feel good about it in the moment, sounds good. Now I actually have to do it. What do you maybe or maybe not see as standing in your way of following through on any of this?
I think at first it does sound silly, like to me, oh, imagine doing a TED talk, but it's something where I'm trying to do the things where I feel uncomfortable and just go with it anyway. But I wrote it down because I'm like, do a TED talk. Like, is she kidding? And then I'm like, no, like, why wouldn't you want to do that? And I'm like, there's no reason. It's a great idea. A lot of people haven't summited Kilimanjaro, and so they want to know what's it like. And so it's a good thing. So I'm going to actually not force, I'm going to encourage myself to do it because I do think it's important to be able to have, like you said, just have that confidence within yourself and believing it.
And you have proof of it. That's the thing. If you were coming to me and you, I don't know, maybe just graduated high school, like not even college, like you didn't have any life experience, of course you're nervous and insecure and like, because what are we doing here? Everything's new. You have a body of work. And by a body of work, a life with all of the things. So I would love not just in the moment mantras and remind yourself, but no, literally write it out. Here is what I learned, the skills that I gained, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And challenge yourself, if not the TED talk, again, like I said, just doing a talk for a lunch and learn, or maybe a series of LinkedIn posts, or hosting a Zoom, or just it could be something a little
Mm-hmm.
bit smaller, obviously, to get started. But keep this practice going as you are accomplishing things. And when I say accomplish, by the way, I don't just mean external things that people can see and reward you on, but even internal things like, hey, I have remedied my process of how I evaluate priorities and feeling good about myself. These things are incredibly important. The more you write them down, it becomes part of the story that you tell yourself because it's real.
Right.
And when
Yeah.
it's just in our head or just in a coach's mouth telling you in a moment, it's not going to stick in the way that it would. I think if you really do write it down and maybe even develop a practice of reviewing it. So every quarter, putting a date on the calendar with yourself and saying, taking up space in this world, like minimizing myself, that's something I've been wanting to improve. Instead of just saying, here's my deficit of what more I could do, let's review all the ways you are taking up space already. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be, oh, I spoke up in a meeting or pitched an idea. It could be oftentimes and I'll give you an example from my life. Oftentimes I'll say, I'm sorry as I'm walking down the hall and passing somebody, or I get out of the way. Little things like that. And then I had to work on, okay, I'm actually going to say, excuse me, instead of the words, I'm sorry. Or maybe I'm not going to
Mhm.
get out of the way. I'm going to let them get out of the way.
Yeah.
Note that stuff for yourself. Start like tracking your life for yourself. Write your own memoir.
Yeah.
And when you see your progress in the process, all of a sudden you're like, wow, the self-trust in many ways has already been here. I've just denied it. Or because we're wired to problem solve and we're ambitious people, we always look at what has yet to come. How much better can I be? Which is a beautiful thing. I want us to always be striving, but
Mhm.
you tell me, is it always about the next marathon, always about the next mountain? We've also got to take stock of how far we've come and what we've learned from that as well.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what that might look like as a practice, rituals. I've even worked with people where I say, and these are people who are really suffering from low self-esteem, which I don't think you have, but low self-esteem, questions of worthiness. And I say, create an altar for your young self, a picture. I have one right here of me that I look
Mhm.
at where and every morning you light a little candle and for 3 minutes, you're just like, I'm going to honor you today. I'm going to honor you today. And you may not even know how you're going to honor her, but I'm telling you, the act of doing that
Yeah.
is actually what counts. And
Oh,
over
I
time,
love that.
it evolves. Yeah. Tell me, what are you thinking and feeling?
That definitely warmed my heart, to be honest. And I think I love that. I have a picture that I love of my mom, myself, and my brother that just makes me really happy. And it's like when we really didn't have much, but we were also happy. So it's in a place where I can see it. So I always try to just look at that picture. But sometimes I don't look at it. But I think I like that whole altar idea and just focusing time on it. I like that. I love that.
And making sure that it is about you too, right? So I love that you have a picture of your family. I have one over somewhere else, but really, you are somebody who does tend to minimize oneself in honor of others. Do
Mhm.
making sure that you are centering yourself in all of this.
Okay.
And yeah, I want to talk about that for a second. What are some other examples you might have that you'd be comfortable in sharing that you are minimizing yourself for others?
And one that I can think of all the time is if we were out, and it sounds so silly when I think about saying it, but it'll just be like, oh, I heard XYZ. And I'll be like, I literally just told you that like yesterday and you forgot. And now but I won't say anything. And I'm just like, I'm like, oh, really? And I'll give the response of what I wish I would have gotten,
Mm-hmm.
which again sounds silly once I say it, but in the moment, I, through therapy has helped me a lot. I don't react right away. I just sit and just try to process it. And I think my biggest issue in minimizing myself is that I don't give credit or acknowledgement to that little version of myself. So I'll just be like, it's not a big deal. Let's just move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't acknowledge that version of myself is whether it's hurt, upset, sad, or whatever. I'm just like, it's not a big deal. Just keep moving on.
Okay. Okay. So in that example, you have two things that are happening, two minimizations. So one minimization is not speaking up, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to just say maybe who like you shouldn't have to speak up because then that's going to expend energy. Like you got to pick your battles too. So
Yeah.
you might be correct in not saying anything as well. So I want to acknowledge that you have wisdom there. But the second minimization is the brushing it off, saying, but you shouldn't care, Jackie, or whatever. It's like minimizing it to yourself. That sounds like that's the second minimization, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I think the first one is a strategic decision that may be correct, and you can decide that as you think, as you reflect on it. Like, actually, it was better to preserve the relationship. What was it going to get me to tell them that they weren't active listening? So
Right.
maybe decide I don't say anything. But then the second part, okay, yeah, I do feel undervalued and unrecognized. And that is something I'm going to talk about in therapy, which I'm sure you do. It's triggering something in me that I already had. So in what ways do I feel undervalued from myself? Do I undervalue myself? Because it's not actually about the other people. They're just bringing
Right.
it up. If you valued yourself highly and these people didn't, you'd be frustrated by it. You might change your job. You might get new friends. You might do something about it, but it would not bother you that much. It would annoy you, but it would not wound you. Yeah. What are some other examples you have for me?
It's someone's, I'm trying to, now I can't think of anything
Oh,
because I'm like, but I think minute, like when I, just to make myself small, I'll pretend I won't know something, or I'll be like, oh, that, yeah, that's new. I had no idea. I always try to make the other person more comfortable, or at least feel like they know better.
okay.
They're wiser.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And that you have decided that is the correct way to operate because you've seen evidence. And I'm going to say evidence in quotations here because
Mm-hmm.
you happen to have experiences doesn't mean it's the ultimate truth. It's just like
Right.
the luck of the draw that you happen to have either a father or a boss who said a certain thing, but it is because you have experienced if you do not make the other person feel smarter, that hurts you and it hurts them,
Right.
correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
What also hurts you though and hurts them is you not being yourself, actually. And I say this to people who don't speak up in meetings and offer ideas. I'm like, it is not just hurting you in your career. You are literally hurting your company. You're hurting the business. You're hurting the customer because your idea could help other people or even like your colleague. You pitch an idea and now they get to participate in it. And it, I don't know, gets them a raise and changes their life. There's this ripple effect from being yourself that for you to deny it, again, doesn't just hurt you, but all the other people who are touched by you making an action. So I think it's about strategizing here of ways in which you can make another person feel good while also being who you are. And so
Okay.
not feeling like you have to trade, right? Like it's this binary either or, but something where all of it can exist together. When I say
Mm-hmm.
that, do you already get a sense of what that could be for yourself?
Yes and no. In theory, I do, but if you were to be like, okay, give me an example, I'd be like, I have no idea.
Yeah, and I like to work off of examples because if this is all theory, you're not going to make any change. Let's take the example of a person saying a thing to you and you're like, "Oh, I didn't know that," or whatever. I'll just throw out an example, a suggestion off of that. When they are telling you a thing, how can you respond in a way that's, let's talk about what you actually want to do here, which is make them feel good about having given you information.
Okay.
Saying, yeah, I actually did read that or blah, 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 and then asking them a question. I'm curious how you would have responded in that, or give me with your actual life, you could tell me what you would actually say.
Yeah.
A way where you can build on what they've given you, because that's going to make it more interesting for them. If they're always in
Right.
the teacher position and you're like, okay, they're only going to learn so much. They're actually not going to learn anything at all. They're just hearing themselves. However, if you are
Mm-hmm.
receiving the information and then adding to it, throwing the ball back to them, furthering the discussion in some way, now all of a sudden they feel good because you've received the information well, but they also are feeling like, oh, this is a peer, this is a partner, this is somebody who's, again, not just challenging me in a negative way, but like getting me to think critically about this. I think it's all in how you say it and not just what you say, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. This is why acting is, I have a theater background. And it's just, when you read something on a paper, you could read it in a sarcastic way, or you could read the same lines in a really earnest way. And the words never changed. It was all how you did it. So, in
Right.
this example I've given you, or anything else you can think of, how might receive information you've already known and then build on it with the person?
I think the example that you shared is a great one because I never even thought about having extending the conversation. I'm always like, I told you that, or I already knew that. I guess because of how I grew up, it was always just you don't say much, or you brush your feelings aside, and it's just like just put your head down and do what you need to do. It's not really like engaging in conversations. Like conversations weren't really had. It was more like I'm telling you this, go do it, don't ask questions.
I think the theme of today in everything we've talked about is about building relationships. because that's
Yeah.
what you're doing first and foremost with yourself, but second with your colleagues. And so it's
Hmm.
not even about that one conversation. It's about it being part of a building block and a process of a relationship, and really seeing them as, how do I take this conversation? This is within my personal interest, but what's this person's story? What's their
Right.
motivation and goal? And yeah, on the surface, maybe they seem a certain way, but listen, maybe worked there for a long time, and then you're going to start to get a sense of, oh yeah, they like to be the person who knows all the things. And so I'm going to go to them and say, hey, I'm noticing there's a little bit of a personality dynamic between these two people, or, hey, I want to pitch an idea. You've been here for a long time. What do you feel like it would get me to success? So you start to seek them out for their expertise. And
Hmm.
that's going to make them feel good. But the only way you're going to know how to converse with this person is really understanding like who they are. So if we can maybe take the pressure off the conversation to be right or wrong, or information or not information, but just as, again, like that building blocks of a understanding of who humanity, and it'll just become a lot more interesting, I think, to you, and will feel less like a test that you're either succeeding or failing at. Again, and this is not just you, this is so many people, including myself, but we really want things to be that binary, which it's
Yeah.
not a little bit like that too. I'm giving you information, you go and act on it, and that's how we're doing. And there's a very obvious power dynamic too, and hierarchies in how people are connecting with each other. And God, it's so limiting. It's so limiting.
It really is. Yeah.
It's so fucking limiting, which of course came from where they were raised and culture and all the things. But if it's just about human beings trying to figure out life together, and then we get put into an office setting. So we've got that
Right.
pressure of performance and
Hmm.
making money. And we are
Yeah.
such complicated relationships with that. On top of it, the fear of being fired is always looming over, not always, but in a not great economy, it's looming over you. So just know that you are operating under these really extreme circumstances. And when I say
Hmm.
you, I mean everybody watching and listening. There's a lot of pressure on us all the time.
Right.
But if we can reduce it to its elements, which is, we are just human beings trying to connect with
Hmm.
ourselves and each other. And everybody wants the same thing, which is honestly to be loved, I think. You know, you reduce it way down to that element. People want to be recognized. I know you know that because you came in saying, hey, I'm minimizing myself so that these people feel good or whatever.
Hmm.
It's going to make them feel even better if you are honoring them and you honor yourself at the same time.
I agree.
It truly will, because it's going to elevate the conversation that will lead to an actual friendship. Not a friendship. I don't think people should necessarily even be friends at work, but a real relationship, a real human connection. They're going to walk away
Yeah.
from that interaction and be like, I felt something with this person. That's what they're craving too. So just brainstorm ways that actually can translate for you. Because again, I know we've spoken in X here, but if you can game plan it out for yourself, going, all right, I know that I typically do X, Y, and Z things in X, Y, and Z scenarios, which means it's going to happen again. When this
Hmm.
person talks to me and I can feel my body inside starting to go, ugh, anticipate all the micro steps within you that are going to happen.
Yeah.
Then what are you going to do? You're going to take a deep breath. You're going to note your shoulders. You're going to remind yourself we're just human beings trying to connect. You're going to challenge yourself to say, how do I honor them and me? And also acknowledge that I'm probably going to not be great at it in the beginning because I'm undoing many years of how I've been socialized. And then it gets better. And then you do it again and again. Well, you're also doing this other work that we talked about earlier today. In our final minutes, anything else you want to share? Or there's so much to talk about and not enough time. But I'm just so grateful to you for the honesty and openness that you've brought to this conversation with yourself. You have everything that it takes to get where you want to go. It's just a matter of creating that process and practice for yourself and following through
Right.
on it, just like you've already shown in your personal life.
Yeah. No, I think this was great. And it's very helpful for me to have you like state all these tips and just how to do things. So I'm excited just to do my TED talk and then maybe take it out on the road, as one would say.